Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to see you all got up early this morning. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Deborah, for that kind introduction. It's really great to be here with so many pioneers and champions who are fighting to give our nation's families more quality options in their children's education. We each have a different story of how we got here. Here's mine. 30 years ago, when my oldest son Rick was entering kindergarten, I visited a small urban Christian school in my hometown at the same time he started school. I knew that my husband and I were going to be able to send him to whatever school we thought was best for him. But when I visited the Potter's house, I realized very quickly that the many families that were there had a large sacrifice in order to be able to have their children there. And for every family that had a child there, there were probably 10 or 20 other families who couldn't afford the tuition and couldn't make that same kind of choice as Dick and me. So we decided at that time to help some other kids have the same opportunity as our children. We started work with that school and then more broadly in our community, funding scholarships, and realized very quickly that while we were helping individual children, which was important, it wasn't an effort that was particularly scalable. So I really decided to get involved in public policy, which I thought was going to make the most difference. I recognized a need for a fundamental shift in education. Defenders of the status quo like to paint me as a voucher-only proponent, but the truth is I've long supported public charter schools as a quality option for students. I worked with many others. To get Michigan's first charter legislation passed in 1993, ours being the third state to do so. And my husband founded a charter high school in Michigan that focuses on aviation, educates kids in STEM fields, and prepares them to contribute in significant ways to our 21st century economy. Whatever your own journey looks like, we're here because we came to the same conclusion, that as a nation, we are simply not doing a good enough job educating our kids. We all saw too many kids languishing in schools that did not work for them. We knew that if given choices, these students and their families would find an environment that suited them and challenged them. Let me be clear up front. This is in no way an indictment of the great teachers working every day on behalf of their students. In fact, they should be honored, celebrated, and freed up to do what they do best. If there are any teachers here today, past or present, would you please stand a moment and let us applaud you for the work you do? But they and we all live with the fact that the current structure of education is outdated and ultimately is not geared toward what is right and best for students. Let me tell two stories that illustrate this reality. I met Dan a few months ago. Dan and his wife weren't happy with their children's assigned school, so they did their research and found a school they thought would be a good fit for them. They had to stretch their family budget to buy a house in that school's district, but they thought it was a worthwhile investment for their children's futures. Unfortunately for them, right after they closed on their house, the school board redrew the lines and poof, Dan and his family were now assigned to a different school. This one with achievement levels much lower than the one they moved away from and the one they sacrificed their life savings for. When Dan took his case to the district, the response was, too bad. The second story. Sandy recently moved to Virginia. She was excited to be living in a highly regarded, high-performing district. Her son completed the local school's assessments, and while he had just finished the first grade, he he tested at the 4th grade level. Yet the school told Sandy they didn't have anything to offer a gifted student like him, and he would have to stay in 2nd grade because of his age. So while the school district is well regarded for high performance, it shows that not even a great district is the best fit for every child. I can't justify either situation to these parents when they ask the same question each of us would ask. Why? Why can't my children go to the school I choose? Why isn't there a program that meets my child at his level? Why? The answer should not be take it or literally leave it. How can we be okay with an education structure that's so inflexible and so unaccommodating? Education is foundational to everything else in life, yet the process of acquiring it is based on a family's income or neighborhood. A system that denies parents the freedom to choose the education that best suits their children's individual and unique needs denies them a basic human right. It is un-American, and it is fundamentally unjust. Thankfully, you are among those who are working to give parents the freedom to find that education for their children. It's been more than a quarter century since the first charter law was enacted in Minnesota in 1991. That law didn't evolve out of a vacuum, and it wasn't developed on a whim. It was passed in response to the stories of families like Dan's and Sandy's. Parents were desperate for more options, and they pressed for change. What began as a handful of schools in Minnesota has blossomed into nearly 7,000 schools in 44 states and the District of Columbia, serving more than 3 million students. Through your great work, you've proven that quality and choice can coexist. You've helped weave charter schools into the fabric of American education. Charter schools are here to stay. We're now seeing the first generation of charter students raising children of their own. They know the difference educational choice made in their lives, and now as parents, they want the same options for their children. But we must recognize that charters aren't the right fit for every child. For many children, neither a traditional nor a charter public school works for them. Charters are not the one cure-all to the ills that beset education. So let's be honest. There's no such thing as a cure-all in education. Even the best school in the country, with the best trained educators and the most resources, will not be the perfect fit for every single child. So I suggest we focus less on what word comes before school, whether it be traditional, charter, virtual, magnet, home, parochial, private, or any approach yet to be developed, and focus instead on the individuals they are intended to serve. We need to get away from our orientation around buildings or systems or schools and shift our focus to individual students. Today, the United States is third in per pupil spending among developed countries, yet our students rank 19th in science, 20th in reading, and 24th in math. The problem is not how much we're spending, the problem is the results we're getting. Charters alone are not sufficient. Private schools alone are not sufficient. Neither are traditional schools. And that's okay. Let's humbly admit this fact and recognize that no top-down, one-size-fits-all approach will ever help us achieve the goal of giving every child an equal opportunity for a world-class education. When a learning environment is not the best fit for a student, it's incumbent on us to facilitate their transition to one that does meet their needs. I was in Miami a few months ago and saw firsthand how a community is acting intentionally to meet the diverse needs of its students by providing a wide range of educational options. I visited 3 distinctly different schools: Slam Charter Academy, Christian Many of the students anticipate being the first in their families to graduate high school, and some even had to enroll themselves in the school. For these kids, SLAM is providing a state-of-the-art learning environment that embraces the arts and athletics. CARE serves elementary-age children with a focused outreach to those who are homeless or victims of sexual assault. Located in a homeless shelter in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Miami, CARE gives these kids, who often struggled in a larger school setting, a safe and nurturing environment that addresses their unique needs. The vast majority of students attending CARE do so at no cost to their parents through Florida's tax credit scholarship program. Miami-Dade Public Schools Royal Palm Elementary serves children from its neighborhood and beyond. Led by a dynamic principal and a creative group of teachers who clearly love their work, it was evident why the parents of these students chose this experience for their children. I celebrate the fact that each of these schools is helping students succeed in unique ways. The parents I met didn't care that these were different types of schools. They cared that the school was working for their son or daughter. These schools are simply representative of what is possible in an environment of robust choices. Education is not a zero-sum game. We should not think of it as such. There is no one right way to help kids learn. And just because a school educates children differently than you might propose to, does not make them the enemy. Let's applaud and encourage others who serve students well. It's a both-and situation, not an either-or. A zero-sum myth is continually perpetuated by the education establishment. We cannot, we must not fall prey to that game. Charter schools were created to address the fact that for too many kids, their assigned public school wasn't working for them. The early charter school leaders weren't afraid to color outside of the lines, and in fact, they embraced the creativity, innovation, and flexibility charters represented. But somewhere along the way, in the intervening 26 years and through the process of expansion, I fear we've taken the colorful collage of charters and drawn our own set of lines around it to box others out, to mitigate risk, to play it safe. This is not what we set out to do, and more importantly, it doesn't help kids. No one has a monopoly on innovation. No one has a monopoly on creativity. No one has a monopoly on knowing how every child learns. Charter success should be celebrated, but it's equally important not to, quote, become the man. I thought it was a tough but fair criticism when a friend recently wrote in an article that many who call themselves reformers have instead become just another breed of bureaucrats, a new education establishment. We don't need 500-page charter school applications. That's not progress. That's fundamentally at odds with why innovation, iteration, and improvement must be a constant in our work. Today we have a great opportunity. While some of you have criticized the president's budget, which you have every right to do, it's important to remember that our budget proposal supports the greatest expansion of public school choice in the history of the United States. It significantly increases support for the charter school program and adds an additional $1 billion for public school choice for states that choose to adopt it. This administration has sent a clear message. We trust parents, and we believe in students. And we will fight for every parent and every child, especially those who for too long have been forgotten. The window of opportunity is narrow, and the stakes are too high for us not to act. We must act boldly, and we must act now. So let's recommit and re-engage the entrepreneurial spirit that gave rise to charters 26 years ago. Embracing more change, more choices, and more innovation will improve education opportunities and outcomes for all students. Take a moment and picture a child whom you have helped get a great education. For me, I picture Angie, a young girl I've mentored since the first grade who is now entering her senior year in high school. And I picture Denisha, a girl who failed third grade twice, and when given an opportunity to go to a different school through a tax credit scholarship program, succeeded and just earned a master's degree. Now think about Dan and Sandy and all the other families who need those same opportunities. Drawing our own new lines won't help those trapped inside them. It's time to put down the permanent marker and the straight edge, and instead pick up your brush and palette and paint. Paint in bright, bold colors, and continue to add to the colorful collage that was started 26 years ago. We cannot let the opportunity go to waste. Act. Act now. For Angie, for Denisha, for Dan, for Sandy, and for every parent and child across America. We owe it to them, and we owe it to our nation. Thank you, and God bless you for all you do for America's children.
And now, joining Secretary DeVos, please welcome Derrell Bradford, Executive Vice President, 50 Canada.
I feel like you answered all my questions already. I may just make some up on the fly. Thank you very much for being here today. We don't have a ton of time, so I want to make sure that we actually get to the Q&A. I just want to say it's good to have you out of the heat lamps and the spotlight for a change as well. The first thing, I just want to get to a few questions about you and your motivations, and then we have some questions that the audience has posed. I'm sort of delighted to ask them because they touch on some serious things. So before being the secretary, Madam Secretary, you were a philanthropist, working on education choice for like 25 years. Like I said, now you're the secretary. You're here in DC. You're not taking a paycheck. Tell us how this happened.
Well, Derrell, I think I told a little bit of it during my remarks today. It really has been an iterative journey, and yet when I look back, for 3 decades, I really have been focused on trying to help kids like Angie and Denisha, who I've just spoken about. I also think about people like Michael. I got a lot of flack for telling Michael's story a few weeks ago. A young man who had a very bad experience in high school in Connecticut, and for whom he fortunately has a second chance now, and is doing well in a community college, earning a degree in an honors program to become an emergency room nurse. But stories like Michael's tear me apart, and I know that for every Michael, there are tens of thousands of other Michaels, and my heart is just for them, and I want to help them become everything that they're actually meant to be, to have an opportunity, to have the kind of choices and the kind of opportunities that I've had.
So you raised this as an interesting point too. I think most people in this room, certainly most people in advocacy, policy, charter school leaders, people who are in classrooms trying to make a difference every day, look at their own lives and remember a moment where a particular choice happened or a great teacher happened. What's the most important moment in your own education?
I wouldn't say I had one most important moment. My reflection on my own education suggests that there were many moments of boredom in school. And the high points were teachers who were really engaging and engaged me in different ways. My high school civics teacher was one of my favorites. My high school band teacher was another favorite. So I wouldn't say there was one important moment, but when I think about my own experience, on balance it was positive, but I think it could have been a lot more positive if I had engaging subjects and classes in a different way, and this was a long time ago already. So I think about, and I talk to my kids a lot about this too, about their experiences in school. Learning should be exciting. We should be engaging kids' curiosities from the moment they start and engage in lifelong learning, and encourage young people to just pursue the courses that they pursue, the avenues that they really have a passion for.
So you mentioned the high school band for the peanut gallery in the back. What instrument?
I played percussion.
Okay.
With lots of different fun things.
Yes, okay.
A big variety. It's
Drummer
not a
on
variety.
stage. I like this cowbell. Okay.
Yes.
More cowbell.
I was never allowed to play the timpani though,
Okay.
because we have a really good timpanist, and I just didn't get that opportunity. Everything else in the percussion section.
Okay. Well, I think you're beating up the bureaucracy now, so the discussion continues. So I have some serious questions now. We can get back to the rainbows and leprechauns thing later. So from California, I know you think quality education. I know you think quality education is civil right. I've worked with you and your organizations for a very long time, so I heard you say it, and I know you believe it. You spent the last 25 years working to get students of color, really low-income students of color in particular, better schools as a result. Some folks here don't know if they believe that you believe that, and they question your commitment around these issues. What do you think about those criticisms, and how do you intend to use your office to make sure that students are protected under the federal civil rights framework and other such things?
How I've felt about them, the criticisms have been hurtful. I will admit that, because I think anyone who knows me knows that they couldn't be further from the truth. I think discrimination in any form is wrong. And I have said before, and I'll say again, the department is committed to ensuring that every child has a safe and nurturing environment. And we are and will be continuing to pursue allegations of discrimination in any form as well. So that has been a real hurtful thing for me personally, because it's not white.
It's a tough question. I got one from two educators, one from Maryland and one from Ohio. As charter school educators, my observations are that the political climate is growing more adversarial, and that the relationship is deteriorating between district schools and charter schools. How is the Department of Education trying to bring them together so they can share and learn better from one another?
Well, I think we shouldn't be in an us versus them mentality, no matter what kind of school or what kind of education we're offering. Again, I think, as I said, I think our focus really needs to be on students and doing what's right for individual students. And if we worry less about the moniker we put on a type of education and more about meeting individual students' needs, I think we're going to all be better off in the long term.
Do that again.
Back to Derrell.
I got an interesting question from an advocate in North Carolina. How can our colleges and universities better support the nation's charter schools? Do you have any strategies to promote this collaboration with the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act?
Very good question around, I think there's a number of opportunities, well, a couple of opportunities for colleges and universities. First of all, those that are able to charter schools, I think I would encourage them to do more. There are many, that's right, authorize them. I know that there are a number of colleges and universities that actually have sponsored and authorized charters on their own campuses, but in Michigan, for example, there are a number of really great public universities that have done an amazing job of chartering a wide variety of schools, and I think that approach is a really good one. It really helps to connect the colleges with students in a new and unique way. I think there's also an opportunity through schools of education within these universities to encourage students to be placed in schools other than traditional public schools. And I know that doesn't happen a lot of the time, but I think that's an opportunity. With regard to the Higher Education Act and the discussion around reauthorization, I frankly think that now is the time and the opportunity to, instead of amending an act that's 50 years old, to look afresh at what we want in the 21st century and really start with a clean sheet of paper around how to best support students and how to ensure that they know and are aware of the widest variety of pathways to success as adults.
So, how would you suggest, because I know we got some fans of this move here, how would you suggest people in the audience interact with the office to give you thoughts on a new approach to this?
Well, you certainly can interact with the office, but I also encourage you to interact with your legislators, because ultimately Congress is going to be the author of this, whatever it is. And I think they need to hear, if you agree with the notion that we should start with a clean sheet of paper and support the things that are really going to support students in higher education, then sending that word and getting that word through to your legislators to encourage them to think in a new way, I think would be very, very helpful.
We have one question from the school leader in Idaho. And you sort of mentioned this earlier about funding and that innovation is sort of the problem, not resources. This person says, I appreciate all the department's help in opening new charter schools, but what's being done to help charter schools already in existence that struggle with funding equity? And the school leader cites a recent study from the University of Arkansas that showed that on average, charter schools are funded at about $5,700 less than district schools. Like, what are your thoughts on that and how that problem should be tackled?
Well, this has been an issue from the beginning with charters, and I think that legislators are becoming increasingly aware of this reality. With the implementation of ESSA, there will be a requirement for transparent information around the cost per pupil in all of the schools in the state. So that would be one avenue to be able to get some of the information out on that. But I think that, again, we need to be continuing to focus on the notion of investing in individual students and not so much investing in buildings or systems. And I think if we keep talking about that and the reality that every child is equally valued, we can begin to migrate the conversation in that direction much more effectively.
So a bit of a technocratic question, but a really good one. So this, it's really about quality versus fast growth. A lot of people are saying who are concerned that you like pluralism among school types and like more nuanced ways to measure effectiveness. What do you think about that? What do you have to say?
Well, I know it's a robust discussion, and I'm happy to be a part of the discussion about how we can meet the needs of students today. And I think, again, our focus should be on not choice for choice's sake, but choice because parents are demanding something different for their children. And for every year that they don't have that opportunity, their child is missing out. And when I hear some of these improvement plans being suggested that, well, we won't see the results for 10 years, or we won't be fully implemented until 15 years. Well, a child's going to be all the way through school by then. And so, again, our focus needs to be on individual kids and what do we need to do to help them today, not tomorrow, not next year, not 5 years from now. But again, choice for choice's sake is not the issue. It's choice to be able to meet the needs of kids.
So last question, because I know you're on a very tight timetable. What is the most important lesson you've learned working in the federal government for the last 4 months, other than that people take spelling and take mistakes on Twitter very seriously?
I have confirmed that there's a lot of red tape, and there's even more than I had feared. And I think the big lesson for me is be very careful about what you want the federal government to do, because even with the best of intentions, everything the federal government begins ultimately becomes more cumbersome and more belabored and more complicated. So a very good example of this, some of you may have read about it recently, but there's a program called Upward Bound. That's a competitive grant program that was the application process for which was started and completed before I took office, but the results were beginning to be communicated when I was in office for a few weeks. And it was discovered that a number of the applicants had made errors in formatting. So some of the applications had some single spacing instead of double spacing. Some of them had 11-point font instead of 12-point font. I mean, it was all kinds of formatting errors that were supposedly rejecting them from being able to be a part of the competition. Now, these kinds of things are just befuddling to me. And apparently this has been going on with this particular competition and others like it for a number of secretaries, and nobody has really tackled it and done something about it. So as soon as I found out about it, we did away with those requirements and have said, going forward, applications will be considered on their merit, not on formatting inaccuracies. Dozens and dozens more.
I'd like to thank you for coming to talk to everybody here today. I know this audience is very interested in your position on some very important issues of charter growth and equity across the country. We get a round of applause to the Secretary.